we were hanging out there, these footsteps kept getting closer and closer, and they kept sounding, more and more aggressive, and we started to get real worried. And then all of a sudden we started hearing like crashing through brush, and this tree just fell over, and that was it, man. We were done.
It was late out. It was about middle of September. After work, I was on my way home. As I pulled up, I saw there was something there. Its eyes lit up and flashed light back to me from the light of my vehicle. That was pretty disturbing because that's not a natural thing that happens with humans.
7 forests, 7 encounters. Ordinary people, alone with the shadows, face something massive, unseen, and impossible. Footsteps circle, figures vanish, giant footprints appear. Each story leaves the same question: what really moves through the woods when no one is watching? And how close have we been without ever knowing? Wild Man of the Woods is a gripping docuseries that recreates real Bigfoot encounters, often bringing original witnesses back to relive moments that changed their lives. In this episode, Kevin and his friend head out for what they expect to be a harmless night at Oak Openings Preserve. The woods feel calm and familiar until the darkness shifts. Unnatural sounds erupt around them. Footsteps circle the campsite. Branches crack in the shadows. Then a guttural wail tears through the night, shaking them to the core. The experience leaves a mark they never fully shake.
That scream, man, it was just like nothing I've ever heard. It was freaking terrifying. To this day, I honestly don't know what it was. I can't explain it, but it definitely was not a human.
Kevin and his friend are relaxing by the fire when the forest suddenly goes quiet. The usual nighttime sounds fade into an unnatural silence. Almost immediately, footsteps move just beyond the firelight, circling them in a slow, deliberate rhythm. At first, they try to rationalize it. Wildlife, maybe someone passing through. But the longer it continues, the harder it is to ignore. The movement feels intentional. The calm of the evening disappears as they realize something unseen is deliberately surrounding them.
We were just sitting out there around the fire hanging out, and then everything just got real quiet, like freaky quiet. There was no crickets, there was no birds, no nothing. And then all of a sudden we started hearing these footsteps all around where we were chilling, just walking around a circle around us. It was really freaky.
The presence closes in. Footsteps grow heavier. Something pushes through the underbrush, snapping branches as it moves. Then a tree crashes down nearby. Whatever courage they had left breaks. Whatever is out there has made itself known, and they run.
As we were hanging out there, these footsteps kept getting closer and closer, and they kept sounding, more and more aggressive, and we started to get real worried. And then all of a sudden we started hearing like crashing through brush, and this tree just fell over, and that was it, man. We were done.
Then comes the sound. A raw, guttural wail rips through the night, unlike anything they've ever heard. It isn't human. It isn't any animal they recognize. The noise freezes them in place, carrying a weight that feels ancient and powerful.
So blood-curdling that it shook them to their very core.
That sound was just like nothing I've ever heard. We spent a lot of time out in the woods, hanging out, sitting around, drinking beer, but I've never heard anything like this. Like, if you could imagine a woman just screaming at the top of her lungs, but it sounded creepier, like lower and more guttural, and I could just like feel it in my bones. It was terrifying.
The memory still unsettles them. People offer explanations, but nothing accounts for the massive presence that moved through those trees. It was larger and more deliberate than anything they had encountered before. From that night on, the woods no longer felt familiar. They felt watched.
Dude, to this day, I have no idea what that was. Everybody that I've told about this is like, oh, you probably just saw a black bear. There are no black bears in this part of Northwest Ohio. Like, there's not a single black bear anywhere around here. They have them in the southern part of the state. They have them up in northern Michigan, but not around here. So I know for a fact it wasn't a bear. We don't have anything else that big besides deer, and I know what a deer looks like. Whatever was out there, all I know is it didn't want us there, and I will never go back into those woods as long as I live.
What stalked them that night may never be known, but one thing is certain: they encountered something powerful and unexplained, and they have never returned. The YouTube channel Small Town Monsters is known for investigating eerie legends and unexplained encounters, but in this episode, the focus shifts to one of Maine's most guarded mysteries. Guided by Michel Soulière, author of Bigfoot in Maine, the team heads deep into the forests and small towns, following stories that refuse to fade. What begins as a routine investigation quickly uncovers accounts from locals describing a creature unlike any known wildlife, raising a deeper question: how much of Maine's wilderness remains untouched?
Bigfoot in Maine is probably one of the state's biggest secrets up until this point. I think until Finding Bigfoot showed up a few years ago to talk to people about it, most people didn't think about it. But as soon as you start talking to people about it, you find that there are actually a fair number of people sprinkled through the population who have had encounters that don't match any of the large mammals.
One of Maine's most talked about encounters took place in Durham in 1973. A group of local children riding their bikes one summer afternoon reported seeing a towering figure moving with startling speed, switching between upright strides and sudden bursts on all fours. The story spread quickly, carried in disbelief and hushed conversation, and remains one of the state's most enduring mysteries.
Favorite report of all the reports is the cluster of reports that happened in Durham, Maine in 1973. In July of that year, they had some kids riding their bikes in a cemetery, and they ran home and they told their mother that they saw this bipedal creature, a creature on two legs running through the cemetery that occasionally would go down on all fours, ran very rapidly.
No one expected what they witnessed that day, something massive, moving with a strength and agility that defied logic. Decades later, the account still circulates through local shops and quiet conversations, leaving a simple but unsettling question: what did they really see?
They didn't even think of Bigfoot. They really thought more like a gorilla, more like an ape. I've actually ran into people, antique shopping or looking in the woods or in the museum. People would come in and they say, oh, I knew about that, or I saw it, or things like that would happen because it's such a vibrant story that people really still share the details of it.
Nate had spent much of his life in the remote forests of central Maine and felt at home in the wilderness, until certain nights changed that feeling. One summer evening, as he and his mother sat by the cabin's campfire, the stillness was broken by sharp, rhythmic knocks. Wood striking wood. There was no one else around. The pattern was deliberate, and neither of them could explain it.
Maine, which is a big hotspot for reported Maine Bigfoot encounters. And since I was younger, myself, my family have had just these strange experiences. My mom and I were sitting around a campfire right outside the cabin, and I think it was around midnight. A lot of things happen around midnight for some reason, and we just, in the middle of the woods, we just randomly start hearing just wood knocks, just random wood hitting wood, and we were like, okay, there's no one else around here. That's really the first thing that happened. I was like, okay.
Late one night, Nate walked the dirt road near the cabin with a spotlight in hand. From the darkness, something large forced its way through the brush. Heavy steps moved toward the shallow creek. Water splashed rhythmically as it crossed, then silence. Whatever it was disappeared back into the woods, leaving behind the unmistakable feeling that it had been aware of him the entire time.
Something huge just forcing its way through the brush, like not trying to be quiet. Between us and the forest is a creek, and we hear it. We start to hear it. We hear it going like shh, like, and we're like, oh, it's a moose or something like that. And then we hear it step into the water, right? And it's pitch dark. We have our lights. We don't see it. This was very clearly like someone walking at the beach in shallow water, where it's like they step in, out of the water. So it was definitely something bipedal, but we heard it. It was just step in the water until it went into the brush and down back into the woods.
Just outside Bangor, strange prints began appearing near a local home. Deep impressions where no one should have been. Over time, more signs surfaced. Each visit to the area revealed something new. Yet whatever left them always slipped back into the trees. It moved with intention. It left evidence, but it was never seen.
Most of the research that I do is in an area that's just outside of Bangor. I had a person come to me and had some prints that he couldn't explain on his property that were right outside of his living room window. We went up to check it out, and since then I've been up there several times. We've actually come across prints. 2 years ago I was able to cast a 17.5-inch track just a half-mile from his place.
The memory has stayed with him for decades. As a high schooler, he came face to face with something impossibly large, an encounter that changed how he saw the forest forever. Instead of trying to convince others, he began tracking patterns, seasons, locations, recurring signs. The evidence, he says, returns year after year. Drawn by Maine's long history of strange encounters, cryptid researcher Alexander joined fellow investigators and filmmakers to search the dense wilderness, hoping to uncover what has remained hidden for generations.
When I was in high school, I actually had a run-in with something large, but that's where I got the facial description that I've stuck onto. I mean, I saw enough where I don't question. And for years, I was trying to prove it and prove it to everybody. Not even so much prove it to myself, but I stopped doing that now. Now I more just track them. It's like, I know they're here. I know what time of the year they're in a basic area. I've been doing it long enough where that's what I got. And I watch, and every year they confirm in one form or another. Whether I find tracks, hear about tracks, I can almost pick it, you know? I mean, and you guys are going to the sweet spot. Like, there's no question.
Mainers are rugged and independent. They trust their own experiences. If someone they know has encountered something, they don't care about skeptics, experts, or officials. First-hand experience speaks louder than anything else.
Are rugged individualists. That they don't want to be told what they should and shouldn't believe. They don't want to be told what they saw or didn't see. They don't want to be told how to think. If somebody has a real life experience with it, or they know somebody they trust that has, they're not going to care whether you have a suit on or have government after your name.
What really moves unseen through Maine's forests, leaving only whispers and signs in its wake? Salish Sasquatch takes viewers deep into Washington's northern Cascade foothills, guided by Tyler Bounds. Raised among towering evergreens, his fascination with Bigfoot began early, sparked by whispers in the trees, strange impressions in the dirt, and the feeling of being watched. That childhood curiosity never faded. It became a pursuit.
In my view, Maine has the right ingredient.
My name is Tyler Bounds, and I am a Bigfoot enthusiast. I was raised in Pacific Northwest Washington, in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, the northern Cascade Mountains. I got interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon.
On a narrow forest trail, something made him stop. Across a clearing, two enormous figures moved with purpose. One stood taller, broader. They didn't run, they didn't panic. They simply crossed and disappeared into the timber as if they had never been there.
Very young age, know what was going on, and I looked past the big, tall, preteen kids that were in front of me, and I saw two big, hairy figures, a big one and a bigger one, cross the trail in front of us, probably 75 to 100 feet in front of us, going from right to left. And it was a big one and one that was...
Years earlier, another moment had carved itself into memory. Chaos erupted at his grandparents' ranch. People ran, doors slammed. 2 Land Cruisers filled in seconds. No one explained. Everyone reacted. and the tension of that day never fully left.
I don't remember the details because it was 50 years ago, but I remember people ran back to the cars that we had 2 vehicles and 2 Land Cruisers that we had all crammed into. There might have been more, but I definitely remember there were 2 Land Cruisers that came from my grandparents' ranch.
Later, plaster of Paris hardened inside deep, unnatural footprints. Time blurred the smaller details, but not this. Standing at the ranch in southern Oregon, staring at 2 massive casts. Solid, measurable, heavy. Something had walked there.
But somebody ran back, or more than somebody ran back to the vehicles and got plaster of Paris and made and poured it into these footprints. And I barely remember any of that, but I distinctly remember getting back to my grandparents' ranch in southern Oregon and my grandfather having these 2 plaster casts, footprint casts.
On a separate journey, he met a name he had only seen in books, Bob Gimlin of the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. The meeting felt surreal. History wasn't just footage anymore, it was standing in front of him. What began as respect became friendship, linking his path to one of the most debated encounters ever recorded.
Went on this expedition, and I met a ton of people that I still know to this day. Met people that I had read about. I met this guy named Bob Gimlin, who was the G in the PG film, the Patterson-Gimlin film, the famous footage from October 1967, which was an incredible moment for me.
Then came the tracks that changed everything. A right foot, a left, then another right, deep, clean, perfectly spaced. The stride was long, longer than it should have been. He had never seen prints this clear, this deliberate. In that instant, the forest felt closer than ever before.
And what do you know, there were 2 footprints there, barefoot footprints, and it was a right foot, and then the left foot had stepped into some leaves or a kind of a matted down grassy area, and then there was another right footprint, so it was 2 right feet, and the stride was right, and the size was right, and I kind of freaked out because I hadn't found really clear, obvious to me, Bigfoot footprints before.
The most violent encounter struck without warning. A heavy impact slammed into the minivan's front, then the driver's mirror, then the roof behind him. 3 blows, precise, powerful. His pulse spiked as he gripped the wheel, frozen in disbelief.
But I didn't have any time to do anything. I looked up and, whoa, and there was something there, and I hit it on the left front, with the left front of this minivan, and I hit it. The driver's side exterior rear view mirror slammed in, and something smacked the top of the minivan on the driver's side behind my head.
He turned the vehicle around immediately. The road behind him was empty. No animal darting away, no fallen branch, no person in sight, just stillness pressing in from every direction. Whatever hit him had already slipped back into the dark.
And so I immediately turned around. I was the only vehicle on the road. I think by this time it was like 1:30 in the morning, 1 or 1:30, and when I went back, I turned around and I went back to help this person, and there was nobody in the road. There's nobody, and And I turned around again, and there's nothing in the road. There's nobody in the road. There was no other animal. There was no deer or coyote or anything. I'm still convinced that I had just hit a person, and was very upset about that.
And finally, the forest left its clearest message, a stretch of trail marked by enormous footprints, spaced with unnatural consistency. Each step carried weight, intention. He stood there, aware of the silence around him, and the possibility that the silence wasn't empty at all. The moment etched itself into memory.
It's kind of a misnomer that they call it the tightrope walk, but their straddle is less pronounced than a human stride, the straddle line. But they're pretty close, aligned with each other. And like I said, 40 plus inches step length. And it was pretty cool. I have video of that.
I'm only a couple minutes into my hike. I came across these footprints, big ones. There's my foot next to it. Footprints go in a straight line up the road. So I'm on my way to kind of a little secret-y spot I've wanted to get to for a long time. But these are big footprints in a straight line and 4-foot stride. There's my pole fully extended, 135 centimeters, so it's like 42, 43 inches. Like 40 inches from toe to heel, maybe a little less. But here's my tracks. I mean, I've got like a freaking 16, 18-inch stride.
Yeah, the craziest thing I had happen to Morton is when we were sound blasting whale songs through a speaker on top of a car up on one of the upper things. And whale songs came back out of the woods.
Footprints, figures, impacts, patterns that refuse to disappear. The forests of the northern Cascades still stand quiet, but quiet doesn't mean empty. So what moves between those trees? And how often does it choose to remain unseen? On Animal Planet, the search for Bigfoot doesn't begin deep in the forest. It begins with the people. When the BFRO put the word out across rural Florida, they weren't just hoping for stories. They were testing a question that refuses to disappear. At a packed meeting in Makah, hunters, fishermen, and lifelong outdoorsmen gathered. People who know these woods better than anyone. Too many hands went up. Too many stories matched. And for a moment, the idea of Bigfoot stopped sounding like a legend and started sounding like local knowledge.
Glad to see we had a lot of witnesses lined up out there. A lot of redneck looking dudes. They always got good reports. This place is as redneck as anywhere. And those dudes get out there. These guys are outdoorsmen, hunters, fishermen. So you're gonna have a lot of potential Bigfoot witnesses.
I love this part of Florida.
Have you seen or encountered a Bigfoot? Could you please raise your hand?
Jeff is a local Florida resident and regular visitor to Makah River State Park. He isn't a storyteller chasing attention. He's a local who knows these woods. Just 3 days before the BFRO meeting, he pulled over near the north entrance of Makah River State Park when an uneasy awareness stopped him cold. The feeling wasn't fear. It was recognition. Something was there. When he turned, he came face to face with a towering, hair-covered figure standing where no animal should have been. The moment passed quickly. The figure turned, moved with deliberate calm, and vanished into the trees, leaving behind an encounter Jeff says doesn't belong to any known species in Florida.
My name is Jeff. This happened 3 days ago. Stopped at the north entrance to Makah River State Park. I felt that something was watching me. I stopped, I looked to my right, and I made eye contact with a very tall, hairy hominid. And I said, "Hey," and it turned around and ambled off into the woods.
In April of 2012, a man traveling on foot settled in for the night beneath a highway overpass. His rest was brief. From the darkness above, a deep, unfamiliar sound began moving down the steep slope nearby. Slow, heavy, and deliberate. It wasn't traffic, and it wasn't wildlife. Each step carried intention. As the sound drew closer, the space beneath the overpass stopped feeling like shelter and began to feel dangerously exposed.
I was hitchhiking in April of 2012, and I was going to go down and camp out underneath the underpass. And slept for a little while, and I woke up to a strange sound that was coming right down the embankment. Just like the
Everyone in the area already knew Maka had a reputation for strange sightings, but the turnout at the town hall left even the most skeptical stunned. One attendee, long doubtful of Bigfoot, described an encounter that defied belief. The creature's presence was overwhelming, a surreal mix of sounds that felt part animal, part human, and part something else entirely. Long, flowing hair caught the wind as it moved, and two glowing red eyes locked onto him, freezing him in disbelief. It was a moment that no words could truly capture.
I couldn't believe my eyes, because I didn't believe in Bigfoot.
I compare it to a bear, a cow, and a person. Yelling all at once is what it sounded like.
The hair was really long, just flowing in the wind, all the way down the body.
I spotted these two big red eyes, and I was like, holy.
The BFRO team headed straight to the site of Jeff Cook's recent sighting, just days old and only steps away from other reports. The road was quiet, flanked by thick palmettos and ancient oaks, but the air itself felt tense. Jeff, a former military man, felt an uneasy stillness freeze him at dusk. When he turned, a towering, hair-covered figure met his gaze. For a tense heartbeat, they locked eyes. Then, silently, it vanished into the underbrush, leaving the team with a story that cemented Maka's reputation as a Bigfoot hotspot.
It's really important for us to check out Jeff Cook's sighting because it's so recent, and where it happened was so close to some of these other sightings.
So do you mind running us through everything that happened?
Sure. It was this past Wednesday, the 28th of January, right before dusk. I was walking down the road, just getting a little exercise, and I got a creepy feeling. So I stopped and I looked to the left, and I immediately made eye contact with a big, hairy hominid. I knew the only thing it could be was a Bigfoot. Finally, I said, "Hey!" And it ambled off into the palmettos and disappeared. It was standing right next to that oak tree. Its mouth was slightly open.
Matt understands Sasquatches are unlike any other animal. Unlike bears, which may appear in daylight, they think, plan, and mislead, turning the forest into a maze designed to fool even the most experienced trackers. Every encounter is calculated, every sighting a test, making them as elusive as they are mysterious.
Renee claims to be a bear expert, but I am a Sasquatch expert, and I can tell you that bears and Sasquatches have completely different interactions with humans. While bears will try to avoid people, they'll still be completely out in the open in daylight. Sasquatches are highly intelligent, and they'll use their intelligence to throw people off their trail. And they'll sometimes use misdirection to prevent people from following them.
With so many eyewitnesses, chilling encounters, and calculated movements in these woods, the question isn't whether Bigfoot exists. It's how close are we really willing to get before we come face to face ourselves. On DMAX UK, true stories of the unexplained come from ordinary people facing the extraordinary. Ellen Vitera, a local resident, never expected anything unusual on a quiet September night. After finishing work, she was driving home when she rolled into her farm driveway and caught sight of something she would never forget. Her headlights reflected back a pair of glowing eyes, in a way no humans ever could. What happened next would challenge everything she believed about reality.
It was stayed out. It was about middle of September. After work, I was on my way home.
At 11 p.m., Ellen pulled into the driveway of her farm.
As I pulled up, I saw there was something there. Its eyes lit up and flashed light back to me from the light of my vehicle. That was pretty disturbing because that's not a natural thing that happens with humans. This kind of dread set in, and I looked at it, and its whole upper body moved towards me.
It was enormous, towering, cloaked in a dark, matted mass that seemed almost alive. Ellen could hardly believe her eyes as it moved closer, sending a chill down her spine. And just as suddenly as it appeared, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a heavy silence.
It was just very large. I believe that I just witnessed Sasquatch.
Panic gripped her as she sat behind the wheel. Desperate, she grabbed her phone to call for help. Moments later, her partner came outside. The figure didn't hesitate. It bolted, vanishing into the forest with impossible speed, leaving only the echo of its presence and a fear that lingered long after.
I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of my vehicle.
Her partner came outside armed.
By first light, Ellen returned to the clearing. Deep, massive footprints pressed into the marshy soil, each hinting at something far larger than a human. She photographed them carefully, knowing the earth might soon erase the traces. Even now, every time she passes through, her eyes scan the ground, searching for signs that it might return.
When I saw it, it was only a little ways in. So as you can see, it's quite marshy, quite spongy. Yeah, it looks like it's all been washed away, but this was where I saw the footprint. Every time I come over this area, I always look down to see if I can maybe see another one.
Fear was only the beginning. The creature's territory seemed to be creeping closer to human settlements, no longer confined to remote forests. On the outskirts of Fairbanks, a man and his grandson stumbled upon evidence that sent chills down their spines. What started as a simple rainy day exploration quickly became a haunting reminder that something massive and unknown was moving silently through the shadows, closer to towns than anyone expected.
In October of 2019, me and my grandson was kind of bored sitting at home. It was a rainy day, so we decided to go out and do some exploring.
As they carefully picked their way through the muddy clearing, Ellen's grandson, Joe, suddenly froze. Pointing to the ground, he saw a single, enormous footprint pressed deep into the mud. Its size sent a shiver through them, an undeniable sign that something immense had passed, and the forest seemed to hold its breath in eerie silence.
We had to cross through a few big mud puddles, and as we did, my grandson said, "Hey, look at that."
I called my grandpa over, and I was like, "Dude, what the heck is this thing in the mud?"
It's crazy.
I went and looked, and it was a huge footprint in the middle of this mud puddle.
This is crazy. Look at this.
At the North American Bigfoot Center in Oregon, leading researcher Cliff Berickman, who has spent decades studying mysterious footprints and unexplained evidence, examined the astonishing print. 5 distinct toes and a sharply defined heel suggested it landed flat, unlike a human step. The size and precision were undeniable, proof this was no ordinary footprint.
You can see 5 toes across the front and a well-defined heel. The Sasquatches seem to come down rather flat-footed. They don't come down heel first like people do. If the foot came down flat, then you would expect a nice, clean heel impression, and that's exactly what we see here.
Far away in Oklahoma, cryptozoologist Lance Hightower studied the evidence from Fairbanks. Footprints of this scale and clarity are incredibly rare, both awe-inspiring and unsettling, hinting at a presence far larger than anything anyone had ever encountered.
Very rare to find a Bigfoot print
of the quality like the one in Fairbanks. So to find a print that size, that magnitude, that's terrifying but exciting at the same time.
If footprints this massive are appearing in our backyards, what else could be lurking just beyond sight, watching, waiting, and moving closer than we realize? Cabin in the Woods is a YouTube channel that draws viewers deep into the heart of the forest, sharing expert bushcraft, survival skills, and quiet nights around the campfire. But one night, the calm the hosts cherished was shattered by something unseen, turning a familiar campsite into a scene of tension. The evening started with routine preparations, but what began as a simple night under the trees would soon become an unforgettable encounter.
What if I told you that every argument skeptics use to try to deny Bigfoot's existence has already been proven wrong by science, by evidence, and by a whole lot of facts they refuse to face? In this video, I'm going point by point through the most common skeptic arguments and proving each one dead wrong, using hard evidence, expert analysis, and facts that most people have never heard. If you've ever debated someone about Bigfoot, or if you're skeptical yourself, this is the video you need to see.
In the shadowy corners of the forest, some creatures show surprising reverence for their dead. Elephants, wolves, and even certain birds leave traces of ritual or care. If Sasquatches are as intelligent, it's easy to imagine them hiding their lost carefully, leaving no trace. Another layer of mystery guarding them from humans.
In addition, there's growing reason to believe Sasquatches may bury their dead. Chimpanzees, gorillas, elephants, wolves, and even magpies have all demonstrated behaviors that suggest mourning or even burial rituals. If Sasquatch has any level of intelligence on par with great apes or beyond, it's entirely plausible that they deliberately conceal or bury their dead, making the odds of stumbling across a skeleton.
Even in areas thick with hunters, Sasquatch sightings remain extraordinarily rare. Most humans stick to trails, blinds, or roads, but these creatures are said to roam miles into untouched wilderness, where few ever venture. Deep in remote forests, they move unseen, a silent presence slipping effortlessly beyond human reach.
Even in heavily hunted areas, most hunters stay on trails, in blinds, or within a few miles of access points. Sasquatches have reportedly been seen miles deep in remote terrain, well outside the range of most hunting activity.
Before we move on, it's worth pausing. This isn't a shot at skeptics. Those open-minded but unconvinced are exactly who this is for. Cabin in the Woods peels back layers of myth and rumor, presenting strange encounters and compelling evidence that may force you to rethink everything you thought you knew. The forest hides its secrets well, but tonight, some of them might finally come to light.
Just before we move on to the next item on the list, I wanted to take a quick moment to make something clear. I'm not attacking Bigfoot skeptics. If you're an open-minded, honest person who simply hasn't been convinced yet that these beings exist, then I have no problem with you. In fact, it's for people like you that I made this video and others like it to try to present the facts and evidence about Sasquatch in a reasonable, logical, clear way that hopefully gives you sufficient grounds to change your perspective.
Some trail cam captures have sent chills through even the most skeptical observers. In Alberta, a camera recorded a massive, shadowy figure seated deep in the forest, its shape and limbs unlike anything familiar, defying comparison to humans or known wildlife. Years later, in Birch Bay, a sequence showed a towering, broad-shouldered biped gliding through the darkness, its posture and reach impossible to ignore. Alone, these glimpses are mysterious, but together they trace a growing path of evidence, hinting at something moving just beyond human sight.
One of the most notable is the 2012 Alberta trail cam photo, showing a massive dark figure sitting in the woods, with proportions that don't match any known animal or human. The visible arm in the image clearly doesn't belong to a bear. Another is the 2021 Birch Bay trail cam sequence that captured a broad-shouldered biped walking past at night. Its sheer size, arm length, and posture immediately create intrigue. These clips, while not definitive on their own, are part of a growing body of visual evidence that trail cams are catching glimpses of something.
Some tracks in the wild tell stories words alone can't capture. Specialists like Dr. Jeff Meldrum have studied casts that reveal subtle ridges in the skin, unique foot flexibility, and weight patterns that no ordinary hoax could reproduce. Each imprint hints at a hidden presence moving silently through the forest, proof of something just beyond human reach.
Like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, have analyzed casts showing dermal ridges, mid-tarsal breaks, and pressure release indicators impossible to fake.
Insiders from parks and forestry hint at carefully hidden secrets. Ancient indigenous stories speak of towering, unseen beings. Taken together, the evidence challenges belief itself, forcing us to wonder what really moves in the shadows of the forest.
We have whistleblower testimonies from forestry workers, government employees, and park rangers claiming cover-ups. We have indigenous oral histories that predate colonial contact, describing creatures identical to modern reports. At some point, refusing to accept the evidence says more about your belief system than the facts themselves.
Well, there you have it. Quite a comprehensive look at why the tired arguments repeated by Bigfoot skeptics really don't hold water when you get down to it.
Although the forest seems calm, the question of what truly moves through its shadows remains unanswered. Is it just a trick of light, or something far more extraordinary lurking in the shadows? On Flash of Beauty, we dive into the real stories behind the mysterious and unexplained. Larry Turner, a native Oregonian, never expected his elk hunt in the dense forests near Hag Lake to turn into a life-changing encounter. What began as a routine trek through the canyons soon became a brush with something far stranger and unforgettable.
I'm Larry Turner. I'm from the Portland area, a native Oregonian. And I'm asked about my first experience. My first experience with the phenomena of Bigfoot happened in 1981. I was elk hunting between Hag Lake, which is Forest Grove area, and Highway 6 towards Tillamook. I was chasing a 6x6 bull elk, went down into this canyon, and it kept on crossing canyons. I was probably 3 hours in and finally decided I had enough chasing him because I could never get a clear shot.
As he made his way back up the skid road, a sudden wave of unease washed over him. Every instinct went on high alert. His skin prickled. Larry had spent years in the wilderness, facing bears and cougars, but this feeling was different. It wasn't the fear of a known predator, it was unfamiliar, overwhelming, and deeply unsettling, like the forest itself had shifted.
I felt really nervous. So I jacked around into my 30-06 and started walking up the hill, up the skid road, and the next thing I know, I stopped and my hair standing up on the back of my neck, hair standing up on my arms, and I can't figure out what's going on. I've been around bear, I've been around cougar, been around all the apex predators, and I've never felt like this before.
Larry came to an abrupt stop, catching fleeting shapes in the shadows, limbs, glimpses of a body. Nothing matched any animal he'd ever seen. This presence was bigger, stranger, and utterly alien to the quiet of the forest.
Figure in this brush, and I look over and I'm kind of going, what the that? I would catch a leg and an arm that would go, arm and hands that would go past the kneecap, and then part of a torso. And I'm looking at this thing going, that ain't no bear. I'm going, well, if that was a bear, he would have been out of here already. And so I'm walking up, every time I took a step, this thing would take a step, 20, 30 yards tops.
As night fell, they set up camp. Cindy, the field researcher, had placed an audio recorder 12 feet up a tree, while another device captured nearby sounds. Suddenly, the forest came alive. Two distinct calls rang across the canyon, intertwining in a haunting, almost musical rhythm. For 2 full minutes, the eerie cries echoed over ridges and valleys, like a song no one had ever heard before.
Set up camp, ate dinner. Cindy does these 2 whoop calls. Had an audio recorder that was sitting 12 feet up in the air. Mine was, both of them were. Next thing we know, we got a real good 2-minute audio of two of them screaming cross canyon with interludes, what, for lack of a better term, would be song.
He stiffened, gripped by a sound he had never heard, raw, chilling, unplaceable. Then it stopped. The tent walls pressed inward. A heavy hand rested at the base of his neck, guiding his head. Every instinct screamed to run, but he couldn't. In that moment, the forest itself seemed alive, and he faced something beyond explanation.
And it stops behind me. All of a sudden, my tent starts getting pushed in. And then contact on the back of my head. Its palm was at the base of my neck. Its thumb right here. The top of the hand right here, as it's gently manipulating my head, pushing through my tent.
The next morning, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. In the gravel, right where his feet had been, was a massive footprint, 19 inches long, each toe clearly defined. He measured it carefully and snapped photos. The evidence undeniable. Whatever had passed through the campsite was enormous and unmistakably real.
Slide into the gravel behind me. What you don't know is that before I did anything that night, I raked down the entire landing so that all the rocks were uniform. I got a 19-inch impression in the gravel with toe splay right there where my feet were. 19 inches, I measured it and took pictures of it.
He captured recordings of the creatures, calls so sharp and clear it was as if they were right beside him. From his driver's seat to the hood of his truck, just 4 feet away, he saw every detail. The sounds rivaled anything on the Patterson film, leaving him both awed and unnerved.
You know, like that, just some real cool stuff. Real crystal clear. I mean, if I was to put that onto the Patterson film, and you gotta think about it this way. I was from my driver's seat to the hood of my truck away from it. 4 feet? I got a pretty good look.
He spends every free moment in the forest, drawn to its quiet rhythms and timeless balance. For him, chasing Bigfoot is just a side note. The true reward is feeling alive in the wild, attuned to the world around him. He notices how most people have lost that connection, detached from the instinct to wander, to listen, and to simply exist in nature's flow.
Thanks. But for me, every free moment I have is in the woods. I'm not Bigfooting. That's a bonus. That's icing on the cake. But just to feel the natural world, to have balance. And I think that's where most of the people do not have, is that balance anymore, because they lost that feel or that drive or what's natural to be in the natural environment. And you know what?
On a flash of beauty, Bigfoot revealed, the search for Sasquatch takes center stage. David Paulides, former law enforcement officer and researcher behind missing411.com, has spent years documenting unexplained disappearances. His interest in Sasquatch began over a decade ago through a chance connection in technology. What started as curiosity has grown into a serious investigation where missing persons and Bigfoot intersect.
My name is David Paulides. I own the websites missing411.com. That includes research on missing people. Originally, I got started on researching Sasquatch about 15, 16 years ago when I had an acquaintance in technology that I used to work for.
From start to finish, David was involved in every aspect of the film, handling nearly everything. When he first stepped into the project, he knew nothing about Bigfoot. At the time, he was a 20-year-old simply approached by individuals eager to uncover the facts. What began as a routine inquiry would soon draw him deep into one of the most mysterious and controversial subjects he had ever encountered.
So everything about that film I was involved with from cradle to grave. The only part I didn't do specifically was the final edit, the sound, the mix, the music, etc. So when I first started off, I didn't know anything about Bigfoot. I was just a 20-year police officer, detective, approached by some people trying to find the facts out about the topic.
Like many newcomers to the world of Bigfoot research, David Paulides first turned to academics. He pored over the work of biologists and followed Dr. Meldrum's studies, believing they held the key to understanding the creature. At first, he trusted that these experts had uncovered the mystery, but as he delved deeper, he would discover that the story of Bigfoot was far more complex and far stranger than any textbook could explain.
As I think a majority of people do when they first enter that Bigfoot world, I went toward the academic side. I listened to the biologists who had written things about Bigfoot. I listened to Dr. Meldrum. And I always thought at the beginning there that, well, those people are the academics. They really should know the nuts and bolts about the topic.
It raises an unsettling question. What does it mean when entire phenomena remain officially unacknowledged? UFOs, glowing orbs, Bigfoot, and other cryptids are consistently dismissed, avoided, or denied outright. To many observers, this refusal to engage is not coincidence, but a pattern. Some believe these mysteries belong in the same category, perhaps even interconnected parts of a much larger, hidden reality.
So let's think about that for a second. What would that mean? UFOs. They don't want to disclose, they don't want to acknowledge. Orbs. Bigfoot. Cryptids. They don't want to acknowledge any of those things. Now, there's a lot of people that would say that that entire topic that I just covered could be placed in one bucket, and they may be all interrelated.
Out of the shadows, a massive figure appeared, an 8 to 9 foot tall creature, unmistakably Bigfoot. It moved toward the explorer with a presence that made the forest seem to hold its breath. Then, in a moment that defies explanation, the creature spoke directly to him, mind to mind. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a confrontation with the unknown that would change everything he believed.
Disability that may happen with a foot, the injuries, all go towards pointing that Bigfoot has maybe supernatural abilities, but has...
Reports of Bigfoot had been pouring in along the San Juan River from Bloomfield to Shiprock, and the numbers were staggering, over separate sightings. The speaker and Stan set out to track the creature, following enormous footprints that looked like oversized human tracks. One print measured a jaw-dropping 21 inches, suggesting a being of immense size, larger than even Shaquille O'Neal. With a stride stretching 5 feet from heel to heel, this was a creature of strength and scale unlike anything they had ever imagined.
We had over 30 sightings of people that reported Bigfoot along the San Juan River up in the Bloomfield to Shiprock area. Me and Stan started tracking this creature about a mile or so. It looked exactly like a large version of a human track. It measured 21 inches. So unless something's out there bigger than Shaquille O'Neal, I wouldn't want to meet it, you know. I mean, it's big. We have a 5-foot stride from heel to heel.
Out of nowhere, enormous tracks appeared, and then just as mysteriously, they vanished into thin air, unsure of what he might capture, but driven by the hope of something extraordinary. Then, against all odds, he filmed a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, eerily similar to Patterson-Gimlin footage. It was a moment where legend collided with reality, leaving him, and anyone who witnessed it, in complete awe.
Even describes that these tracks start and stop sometimes in the middle of nowhere. He goes, it's really strange. And he's carrying his camera around and he's hoping to catch something, but he's not even sure what he's hoping to catch because he hasn't seen anything. And then he catches Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Looks very similar to me to Patty in the Patterson-Gimlin footage.
Throughout his research, David came across Bigfoot tracks of every imaginable size, some so small they almost seemed impossible. During this period, he reached out to Oregon researcher Ray Crow and gained access to his unique collection of studies. Hidden within that archive was one of the earliest recorded tracks of a tiny Bigfoot caught in motion, something few had ever seen. The find added a surprising twist to David's investigation, revealing a hidden world far stranger and more mysterious than he had ever anticipated.
So over the course of me looking into Bigfoot Sasquatch, I've seen all kinds of tracks. Small, medium, large, tiny. Ray Crow in Oregon was a researcher who was selling his research at about the time I was entering. And I went up there, bought the research, and unbeknownst to me at the time, he had one of the first tracks that Paul made of a tiny Bigfoot walking around.
A young girl had just waved goodbye to her husband as he left for his graveyard shift when strange footsteps began crunching on the gravel. Her dogs whimpered under the porch, sensing something she couldn't yet see. Curious and uneasy, she stepped outside, never imagining she was about to witness the unknown up close.
Was working the graveyard shift, and then about 15-20 minutes later I could hear something walking on the gravel. What caught my attention was the dogs. They were under the porch. I'm like, what are they doing? Next thing you know, I got onto the porch. I hear the screen door open.
The screen door slowly creaked open and the doorknob moved by itself. When she looked closer, it was covered in hair, and a strange, awful smell filled the air. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, unsure of what they were seeing. Could whatever left that mark still be out there, just beyond sight? Exploring with Angelo returns to a place that never truly felt empty, where Angelo once came alone and planned to spend the entire night. As darkness fell, the sounds grew stranger, and the feeling of being watched became impossible to ignore, forcing him to leave. Now, he is back with Frank, who after seeing the footage still cannot explain what happened out there. Surrounded by rumors of unknown creatures, they step in knowing whatever was there before may still be waiting.
So, we've decided that we're going to come back to this place that I came not too long ago completely alone. This time I am with Frank, who's behind the camera, and we're very curious. Frank saw the video and he's like, what the happened out there? And I'm like, dude, I don't even know. I was ready to spend the entire night here, and things just progressively got creepier and creepier.
Yeah, that was some creepy shit.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Just noises that didn't make sense. I felt like there was definitely something out there. I felt like I was being hunted. Rumor has it there are like skinwalkers or some sort of creature or something out here.
The moment shattered the quiet without warning, as faint voices seemed to rise from the darkness below. He tried to make sense of it, scanning a ravine that held no trail, only rocks, caverns, and tangled trees. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became that no one should have been down there. Yet something had spoken, and the forest had answered back with silence.
Hang on, I just heard something talking down that way. How? I swear I just heard people. Sorry to cut you off, but I literally heard some
down
people.
Down there?
Yeah.
I don't see anything. I don't even... Wait, where does the trail go? No, I'm pretty sure the trail... Yeah, I don't think the trail goes down there.
No, I don't either. But I mean, looking at it, it looks like just a ravine.
No, it's just rocks.
Oh, is it all rock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like rocks and caverns and stuff. A lot of trees down there.
A sudden glint cut through the darkness, eyes reflecting from somewhere just beyond the tree line. In that instant, the situation escalated, as the threat no longer felt imagined but visible. Whatever haunted this place was no longer limited to rumors of skinwalkers. With coyotes or wolves possibly circling as well, the night had become far more dangerous.
Oh, I just saw some eyes out there. Something glistened. Okay. Well, not only do we have to deal with possibly skinwalkers or whatever that, but potentially coyotes and wolves.
Another flash caught his attention, sharp and unmistakable, sending a chill through the moment. The sense of being watched tightened, the uneasy certainty that they were no longer alone pressing in from all sides. Then something worse happened. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a dark shape where his partner should have been. For a split second, the forest itself seemed to move, leaving behind only blackness and the fear that something unseen was standing far too close.
Yeah, just chuck them right at me, don't worry.
That's okay, I could kind of see where you are because your gloves are lit up like Thanos right now.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I feel like Iron Man. A little bit.
Whew, that's gonna take a second.
I guess it's hardwood, huh?
Yeah. Probably should have started at the smaller spot. Or actually maybe like right here for now.
He was certain he had seen something move near the cluster of trees, a shape slipping through the darkness without a sound. Confusion hit instantly as he questioned whether it was Angelo or something else entirely. The moment unraveled into panic, the realization setting in that whatever moved out there did not announce itself. And as the forest fell silent again, the question lingered. If it wasn't Angelo, then what had just revealed itself?
I could have sworn I saw something by like that grouping of trees. Was that Frank? Oh. Dude, that was like literally...
With tension cutting through his voice, he decided it was time to confront whatever was stalking them. He challenged it to reveal itself, calling out into the darkness instead of hiding like a coward. What made the moment truly unsettling was how close it had sounded, close enough to feel its presence at his side. In that silence that followed, the forest seemed to listen, as if something had just been invited to step forward.
Well, whatever you are, why don't you show yourself? Instead of being some weird, cowardly creature. It was just so creepy because it literally sounded like it was right next to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
They stared in disbelief as what looked like a massive tree, easily 40 feet tall, appeared to be floating where it should not have been. Before they could make sense of it, a deep, chilling sound cut through the air, part howl, part warning, eerily close to a wolf's cry. What made it worse was the direction of the sound. It was coming straight toward them.
That's got to be like a 40-foot tree or something.
I know.
Like, it's massive.
That's a pretty tall tree.
Ah. Well, it's like a howling?
Yeah.
Almost.
It almost kind of sounded like a wolf. Like, no joke.
Go figure in the direction of travel for us.
I know, right?
Some say these beings can imitate other creatures, using sound to lure and confuse. The ground showed evidence of something massive moving through, too heavy, too deliberate to be ordinary. As the night swallowed the noise, one thought lingered. Had they glimpsed reality, or had the forest itself been toying with them all along?
These creatures like to mimic things.
It could be.
They pretend to be other animals. Something big went through there.
Yeah.
Those are not human, are they? I can't tell. They might be. Oh yeah, I think somebody walked that way. Okay, I think those might be human.
After footprints, haunting calls, and an encounter that defied explanation, the question remains, what truly moves through these forests when no one is watching? And how close have we been all along without realizing it? This isn't where the story ends. The forests still hide secrets, shadows still shift in ways we can't explain, and questions refuse to stay silent. Every footprint, every sound hints at something just beyond our reach. Stay with Scary Encounter, because the journey into the unknown has only just begun, and the next revelation is waiting in the dark.